Lieutenant Commander Hannah Park sat in the cockpit of the Needlepoint, her hands steady on the controls despite her racing heart. The ship hummed around her, alive with energy yet eerily quiet. At just 15 meters long, the Needlepoint was tiny compared to standard military vessels. Some officers had mockingly called it the Splinter when the project was first announced. Nobody was mocking now. Through the viewport, Hannah could see Earth's last defensive line, 37 ships of various classes, all that remained of humanity's once proud space fleet. Beyond them loomed the massive shadow that had haunted humanity's nightmares for the past 3 months, the Galactic Dreadnought world render. The alien ship stretched nearly 20 kilometers from end to end, its dark hull covered in weapon ports and shield generators. It had appeared without warning at the edge of the solar system, and immediately destroyed the outer colony outposts. When Earth sent diplomatic ships to communicate, the world render vaporized them without response. Then came the attack on Luna colony, where 3 million people, including Hannah's family, had perished in minutes. Final pre-launch diagnostics complete, said the ship's AI in a calm voice. All systems operational. Hannah ran her hand across the smooth control panel. The Needlepoint was humanity's secret weapon, built in the hidden shipyards of Mars after scientists discovered quantum compression technology. The ship could generate the firepower of a cruiser despite its tiny size. More importantly, it was small enough to possibly infiltrate the Dreadnought's defenses. Needlepoint, this is Mission Control. Captain Tae Kim's voice came through the comm system. Launching in 5 minutes. Are you ready, Commander Park? Hannah checked her systems one more time. The quantum compression field was stable, weapons charged, stealth systems active. Affirmative, Control. Needlepoint is ready. She opened the locket hanging around her neck. Inside was a photo of her parents and younger brother Jun, taken during their last vacation together on Luna. She touched the image gently. I'll make this right, she whispered. Commander Park, a new voice joined the channel. It was Admiral Lee, the head of Earth Defense. I want you to know that whatever happens today, you've already shown extraordinary courage. The mission you're undertaking. His voice trailed off momentarily. Everyone knew this was likely a one-way trip. The entire planet is with you, Commander, he continued. If anyone can find a weakness in that monster, it's you. Hannah closed the locket and tucked it back under her flight suit. Thank you, Admiral. I won't let Earth down. The mission was both simple and seemingly impossible. Earth's remaining fleet would launch an all-out attack on the world render, not with any hope of defeating it, but to draw its attention. Meanwhile, Hannah would pilot the Needlepoint toward the Dreadnought's massive thermal exhaust ports, the only potential vulnerability Earth scientists had identified from scan data. The theory was that a ship as small as the Needlepoint might be able to navigate through the thermal exhaust system and reach the Dreadnought's power core. Once there, Hannah would deploy the experimental quantum disruptor weapon that might, just might, destabilize the core. Launch sequence beginning, announced Captain Kim. Airlock depressurizing. Hannah felt the slight shift as the Needlepoint was moved into the launch tube. Through the viewport, she could see stars appearing as the outer doors opened to space. Fleet is moving into attack formation, reported the tactical officer. Galactic Dreadnought is responding. Their weapons are powering up. Hannah closed her eyes, briefly, remembering her brother's laugh, her mother's smile, her father's steady presence. When she opened them again, her resolve was iron. Launch in 10 seconds, said Captain Kim. 9, 8. The countdown continued as Hannah's hands tightened on the controls. 3, 2, 1. Launch. The Needlepoint shot forward, propelled out of the hidden base beneath the Martian surface. Immediately, Hannah engaged the stealth systems and angled, away from Earth's fleet, which was now moving toward the Dreadnought in tight formation. In the distance, bright flashes erupted as the world render opened fire. Earth ships returned fire, their weapons looking like mere sparklers against the massive alien vessel. Diversion is working, Hannah reported. Beginning approach run. She pushed the Needlepoint to full speed, the stars blurring around her as she raced toward the underbelly of the Dreadnought. The thermal exhaust ports would be there if their intelligence was correct. "Good hunting, Commander Park," came Admiral Lee's final transmission. "All of humanity stands with you." Hana's voice was steady as she replied, "I won't let you down, sir." As the massive shape of the world render grew in her viewport, blotting out the stars themselves, Hana Park prepared to fly humanity's smallest ship against the greatest threat it had ever faced. Space erupted into chaos as Earth's fleet engaged the world render. The human ships looked like toys next to the massive alien dreadnought. Beams of deadly energy cut through the darkness, striking Earth vessels with terrifying precision. Each destroyed ship meant dozens of lives lost, but the fleet fought on, knowing their real purpose was distraction. Commander Hana Park watched the battle from the cockpit of the Needlepoint, her small ship hidden in the shadow of a drifting asteroid. The Vexari weapons were even more powerful than intelligence had suggested. Earth ships exploded one after another, their shields failing against the overwhelming firepower. "All units, continue attack pattern Delta," came Admiral Lee's voice, over the static-filled communication channel. "We must maintain pressure on their forward defenses." Hana's hands tightened on the controls. She knew many of those pilots personally, friends, colleagues, people with families waiting for them. But there was no time for grief. Their sacrifice would be meaningless if she failed her mission. "Needlepoint moving to insertion point," she reported, though she wasn't sure if anyone could still hear her. She guided her ship through the debris field, using the chaos of battle as additional cover. The Needlepoint's engines were specially designed to leave minimal heat signatures, making it virtually invisible to standard detection systems. Still, Hana held her breath each time they passed near one of the Vexari's automated defense drones. The journey to the underside of the dreadnought took nearly 15 minutes. 15 minutes of watching Earth's fleet being systematically destroyed. By the time she reached her target area, communications from Fleet Command had degraded to bursts of static with occasional broken words coming through. "Approaching thermal exhaust port," Hana reported, though she doubted anyone could hear her. Now beginning infiltration attempt, the thermal exhaust port loomed ahead, a massive circular opening that vented excess heat from the dreadnought's power systems. Even from a distance, Hana could see the shimmer of superheated air escaping into space. She checked her ship's systems, one last time. The special heat shields were activated, but they were experimental technology, never tested under these extreme conditions. The readouts showed exterior hull temperatures already rising beyond safe levels. "Here goes nothing," she whispered, easing the needlepoint into the massive vent. Immediately, warning lights flashed across her console. The temperature inside the cockpit rose sharply despite the cooling systems working at maximum capacity. Sweat beaded on Hana's forehead as she guided the ship deeper into the glowing tunnel. "Temperature exceeding design parameters," announced the ship's AI. "Hull integrity at 87% and falling." Hana ignored the warnings, focusing entirely on navigating the increasingly narrow passage. The tunnel walls glowed with radiation, casting an eerie red light throughout the cockpit. Several times, sudden bursts of vented plasma nearly overwhelmed the ship's shields. 5 minutes into the exhaust system, a realization struck her. "This shouldn't be possible," she muttered, studying the tunnel configuration. They never considered an attack from something so small. The Vexari, for all their advanced technology, had built their defenses assuming attacks would come from ships of significant size. The internal security systems were designed to detect vessels much larger than the Needlepoint. Their arrogance had created a critical vulnerability. As she pushed deeper into the dreadnought, the tunnel began to branch into smaller passages. Hana consulted the rough schematic the scientists had created based on scan data, trying to determine which path would lead to the core. "Hull temperature critical," warned the AI. "Cooling systems failing." The air in the cockpit was now uncomfortably hot, and several non-essential systems had already shut down to prevent overheating. Hana wiped sweat from her eyes and continued forward, choosing a downward-sloping tunnel that seemed to lead toward the center of the massive ship. After several more minutes of careful navigation, the tunnel suddenly widened. The needlepoint emerged into an enormous spherical chamber that seemed to stretch hundreds of meters in every direction. At the center floated what looked like a miniature sun, a swirling mass of contained plasma that pulsed with blinding energy. The fusion core. Hana stared in awe at the massive power source that fueled the World Render's planet-destroying capabilities. Around the core, automated systems monitored and maintained the delicate balance of the fusion reaction. There were no Vexari present, likely because no living creature could survive the radiation levels in this chamber without extensive protection. She maneuvered the needlepoint to a maintenance alcove, partially sheltered from the worst of the heat and radiation. The ship's systems were on the verge of failure, but they had made it. Against all odds, a human vessel had penetrated to the heart of the seemingly invincible alien dreadnought. Hana allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction as she began powering up the quantum disruptor weapon. She opened a communication channel, knowing it probably wouldn't reach Earth but needing to say the words anyway. "This is Commander Park aboard Needlepoint," she said calmly. "I'm in." Hana activated the Needlepoint's advanced sensor array, directing it at the pulsing fusion core that dominated the chamber. The ship's computer hummed as it gathered data, mapping the complex network of systems that controlled the massive power source. Colorful diagrams filled her screens showing energy flows, control systems, and safety mechanisms. What she saw made her heart sink. The Vexari engineers had built the core with layers upon layers of redundancies. Every critical system had multiple backups. Even if she somehow damaged the main reactor, secondary systems would engage almost instantly. "Direct sabotage won't work," she said aloud, transmitting on the emergency channel even though she knew it was futile. "They have too many redundancies. I'll need to try something else." Only empty static answered her. The thick walls of the dreadnought blocked all communications with the outside. For the first time since starting the mission, Hana felt truly alone. She took a deep breath and tried to ignore the rising temperature in the cockpit. The needlepoint's cooling systems were failing, and warning indicators showed multiple systems approaching critical levels. She didn't have much time. Hana pulled up the ship's weapons inventory on the main screen. The needlepoint carried several conventional explosives, but these would barely scratch the dreadnought's internal systems. Her eyes settled on the final item, the experimental quantum field disruptor. The weapon had been installed as a last resort. It was based on the same technology that powered the needlepoint's compression systems, but weaponized to create a field that could theoretically disrupt the atomic bonds in enemy technology. The problem was that it had never been tested in actual combat conditions. She remembered the briefing from Dr. June, the lead scientist. His words echoed in her mind. "The disruptor field affects all technology within its range. We can't guarantee it won't destabilize your ship as well. And if improperly calibrated to the target technology, it could either fail completely or cause a catastrophic chain reaction." Hana studied the schematics of the dreadnought again. The fusion core was too well protected, but there was another target. The central command node that coordinated all the ship's systems. If she could disrupt that, the dreadnought's automated safety protocols might turn against it. "So it's a gamble either way," she whispered, plotting a course through the dreadnought's maintenance tunnels. According to the map she'd constructed, from sensor data, the command node was located 10 levels above her current position. The needlepoint shuddered as Hana guided it away from the relative safety of the alcove and back into the network of tunnels. The heat was less intense here, but new dangers awaited: internal security systems and the possibility of encountering Vexari crew members. As she navigated through the narrow passages, Hana's mind raced, calculating odds and possibilities. The quantum disruptor would need to be precisely calibrated to affect Vexari technology without immediately destroying the needlepoint. She would need to get close enough to the command node to ensure maximum effect, but not so close that she couldn't escape afterward. "Ship's computer," she said. "Begin analysis of Vexari technology patterns based on sensor data. I need a calibration profile for the quantum disruptor." "Analysis initiated," responded the AI. "Warning, insufficient data for complete accuracy. Calibration will be approximate at best." Hana nodded grimly. "Do what you can. We won't get a second chance." The tunnel suddenly opened into a larger maintenance shaft. Hana quickly ducked the needlepoint into a recess As a group of maintenance drones floated past, their appendages working on nearby conduits, they showed no sign of detecting the tiny human vessel. Once they passed, Hana continued upward, following the path toward the command node. Twice more she had to hide from security patrols, and once a sudden pressure change in the shaft nearly slammed the needlepoint into a wall. "Calibration profile complete," announced the computer after several tense minutes. "Note: margin of error exceeds 40%. Potential outcomes range from complete failure to catastrophic system collapse." "That's reassuring," muttered Hana, studying the profile. The numbers didn't look good. One wrong setting and the disruptor might do nothing, or it might trigger an explosion that would destroy both the dreadnought and the needlepoint instantly. She reached a junction where 7 different tunnels converged. According to her makeshift map, the central command node should be just beyond the largest passage. Hana eased the ship forward, sensors at maximum sensitivity. As expected, security was heavier here. Automated weapon turrets lined the walls, and sensor arrays swept the area continuously. But they were all designed to detect threats of a certain size. The needlepoint was simply too small to register. Through a transparent section of the tunnel wall, Hana finally saw it, the central command node. It was a massive spherical chamber filled with swirling holographic displays and pulsing energy conduits. This was the Dreadnought's brain, coordinating every system from weapons to life support. The odds against success were astronomical. The quantum disruptor was untested. The calibration was approximate at best. The needlepoint systems were already failing from the stress of the mission, but behind Hana lay Earth and billions of lives. Ahead lay the source of the threat that had already killed her family and millions of others. With grim determination, she set the coordinates and pushed forward, recalling something her father used to say when faced with overwhelming challenges. "Sometimes the impossible is just the improbable waiting to happen." The central command node of the world render spread out before Hana like nothing she had ever seen. It reminded her of pictures of neural networks from her academy textbooks, but built of light and energy instead of cells. Countless glowing strands, connected to a central hub, carrying data to and from every part of the massive dreadnought. The space pulsed with blue-green light, creating shifting shadows across the walls. Hana guided the needlepoint through a small maintenance entrance, keeping close to the outer wall where the security sensors were less concentrated. She cut the OA engines to minimal power, relying mainly on short bursts from the maneuvering thrusters to position her ship. Security drones moved through the chamber in regular patterns. They resembled metallic insects, with multiple limbs and scanning arrays that swept the area continuously. Each one was at least 3 times the size of the needlepoint. "Even their maintenance bots are bigger than my ship," Hana observed quietly, carefully positioning herself behind a cluster of power conduits. She watched the patrol patterns for several minutes, noting their timing and coverage. There was a gap in their security, a small blind spot near one of the primary junction points where several major data streams converged. That would be the ideal position to deploy the quantum disruptor. Waiting for the right moment, Hana eased the needlepoint forward. Suddenly, a security drone changed its pattern, turning directly toward her position. Hana froze, holding her breath as if the drone might hear her. The massive machine passed within meters of the tiny ship, its sensors sweeping over the area. By some miracle, or perhaps because it simply wasn't programmed to look for something so small, it continued on without raising an alarm. Hana released her breath slowly and continued toward the junction point. The ship's stealth systems were working overtime, absorbing any radar or lidar that might bounce off the hull. As she approached her target, another security drone suddenly appeared from a side tunnel. Hana reacted instantly, pushing the needlepoint into a narrow maintenance duct meant for the Vixari equivalent of repair nanobots. The ship barely fit, scraping against the walls as she guided it deeper into the cramped space. The drone paused, outside, its sensors probing the area where Hana had been moments before. After what seemed like an eternity, it moved on. Hana carefully backed the ship out of the duct, the metal hull making a soft scraping sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet space. A few minutes later, A similar close call forced her to dive into another maintenance recess, narrowly avoiding detection. The smallest error, a touch too much thrust, a miscalculated turn, would trigger alarms throughout the ship. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes of careful maneuvering, Hana reached the optimal position near the junction point. From here, the quantum disruptor would have the greatest effect on the command node systems. She powered up the ship's analysis tools one final time, gathering the most up-to-date data on the Vexari systems surrounding her. The computer worked silently, comparing energy signatures and communication protocols to refine the disruptor's settings. Final calibration complete. The ship's AI announced, "Disruptor ready for deployment. Warning, significant risk of feedback. Effect to our systems remains." Hana knew what that meant. Once activated, the quantum field might not discriminate between Vexari technology and human technology. The needlepoint itself could be disabled or destroyed in the process. Through the viewport, she could see Vexari crew members for the first time. They moved purposefully through a transparent section of the command center, their tall, angular forms casting long shadows. None of them seemed aware of the tiny human ship hiding among their vast systems. Hana's finger hovered over the activation switch. Everything had led to this moment: the loss of her family, the desperate gamble of Earth's remaining forces, her perilous journey through the Dreadnought. Success would mean salvation for Earth. Failure would mean her death and likely the end of human civilization. She thought of her brother's face one last time, then pressed the switch. "Here goes everything," she whispered. The quantum field disruptor hummed to life, building power rapidly. A soft blue glow emanated from the needlepoint's hull as the experimental weapon prepared to release its energy. Then, with a silent pulse that rippled through subatomic space, the disruptor activated. There was no visible beam, no explosion, just an invisible wave of quantum distortion spreading outward from the ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, systems throughout the command node began to fail. Data streams flickered and died. Energy conduits overloaded, sending cascades of sparks into the air. Control panels throughout the chamber went dark, then reactivated with random patterns of light. Warning alarms began blaring throughout the Dreadnought, their alien tones rising and falling in patterns that somehow conveyed urgency even to human ears. Through the needlepoint sensors, Hana could see the Vexari crew rushing to different stations, frantically working to regain control of their failing systems. The quantum disruption was spreading faster than they could contain it, jumping from system to system in ways even Earth scientists hadn't predicted. Primary systems failed, triggering backups, which then failed in turn as the disruption reached them. Hana watched in amazement as the mighty Dreadnought, the unstoppable force that had terrorized Earth, began to tear itself apart from within. Chaos erupted throughout the world render as its systems turned against each other. The massive ship's weapons, designed to destroy planets, now fired randomly inside its own halls. Huge explosions shook the entire structure, walls bent and twisted as metal tore apart. In the command node, Hana watched the destruction through the needlepoint's viewport. The quantum disruptor had worked better than anyone could have hoped. The Vexari crew ran in panic as their controls stopped responding. Some sections lost air as emergency systems failed. In others, automated defense turrets turned on their own creators. "Time to leave," Hana muttered, powering up the engines. The needlepoint shuddered as systems came back online. The quantum disruption field had affected her ship too, but the damage was manageable. The path back through the thermal exhaust would be blocked now by debris and energy surges. She needed another way out. Hana studied the rapidly changing schematics on her screen. The Dreadnought's hull was breaking apart in several places. If she could reach one of those breaches, she might escape before the whole ship exploded. She pushed the engines to maximum power, guiding the tiny ship through the increasingly unstable corridors of the dying Dreadnought. Twice, sudden energy discharges nearly hit the needlepoint. Once, a piece of falling debris scraped the hull, sending warning lights flashing across her console. "Just hold together a little longer," she urged her ship as she navigated through a section where gravity was failing. Floating debris made the path treacherous, but the needlepoint's small size allowed it to slip through gaps that would have trapped any larger vessel. Outside, the remains of Earth's fleet watched in amazement as the mighty world render began to break apart. Explosions burst from dozens of places along its hull. Its main weapons powered down, then fired randomly into space. The massive engines flickered and died. On the bridge of Earth's flagship, Admiral Lee stood in shocked silence. Only 3 Earth ships remained from the original fleet, all badly damaged. They had been preparing for a final hopeless attack when the Dreadnought suddenly began to self-destruct. "The needlepoint did it?" Admiral Lee whispered in disbelief, watching the massive alien ship tear itself apart. "But where's Commander Park?" Inside the dying vessel, Hana spotted her chance. A large breach in the outer hull where an internal explosion had ripped through several levels. Emergency force fields flickered weakly, trying to contain the atmosphere. Beyond the breach, she could see open space. She plotted a course toward the opening, pushing the needlepoint's failing engines to their limit. The ship responded sluggishly, its systems damaged by both the heat of the journey and the effects of the quantum disruptor. All around her, the Dreadnought was collapsing. Support beams crashed down. Electrical fires spread unchecked. The ship's massive fusion core was becoming unstable, energy readings climbing toward a critical point. Come on," Hana urged as the needlepoint limped toward the hull breach. The opening was growing smaller as debris collected around it. Soon it would be blocked completely. With a final surge from the engines, the tiny ship slipped through the narrowing gap. Sharp metal scraped against the hull, setting off more warnings. Then suddenly the stars appeared ahead. Hana was free of the Dreadnought. She pushed the engines beyond safety limits, putting as much distance as possible between her ship and the dying world render. The needlepoint's radiation shields were failing, and the heat in the cockpit was nearly unbearable, but Hana kept going. Behind her, the Dreadnought's destruction reached its peak. The fusion core finally lost containment, releasing energy equivalent to a small sun. The world render imploded, then exploded in a blast that temporarily outshone everything else in the sky. The shockwave hit the needlepoint like a giant hand, sending the small ship tumbling through space. Warning lights flashed across every console as systems failed. Hana fought to regain control, using the last bits of power to stabilize the ship's course. As the light from the explosion faded, Admiral Lee spotted a tiny blip on the flagship's damaged sensors. "Is that?" he began. "It's the needlepoint, sir," exclaimed the sensor officer. "Commander Park is alive." 3 weeks later, Hana stood in the rebuilt ceremonial hall of Earth Command. Her uniform was crisp and new, but her face still showed the strain of her mission. Before her stood Admiral Lee and what remained of Earth's military leadership. The ceremony was being broadcast worldwide. Billions watched as Admiral Lee stepped forward with a small box containing Earth's highest military honor. "Commander Park," he said, his voice strong despite his obvious emotion. "Your actions have not only saved humanity but have earned us a reputation throughout the galaxy as the species too small to see coming but too dangerous to ignore." Small smile crossed Hana's face as she accepted the medal. But her thoughts were not on the honor or the cheering crowds. She thought of her brother and parents who had died in the Luna attack. She thought of the brave pilots who had given their lives in the diversionary attack so that she could complete her mission. In that moment, looking at the small medal in her hand that represented such a monumental victory, Hana understood the real lesson of David and Goliath. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't size or power but ingenuity and courage. Far above Earth, the debris of the mighty world render continued to drift through space, a testament to how the smallest opponent can sometimes overcome the greatest threat.